there was one part of the film that I knew what was happening when it happened, and when it was put in the film, I thought that's perfect. Like I get it, and I'm so glad that you guys went there. And it was interesting because as we promoted the film with Apologia TV and all of our listeners worldwide and everything else, people were loving it, got a lot of good reviews. But we did have questions. What was the part about slavery? Like, what was that situation just thrown in? And it was interesting because when it happened, I go, exactly. Right. Like, that was so important to have in there. So someone says they're confused though, Doug. Like, why'd you guys talk about that? Why does it need to be in the film? Why was that such a big issue?
Right.
Okay, so talk about that.
So this is a basic street level apologetics issue.
Okay.
All right, this is very simple. If you find yourself in a discussion with any non-believer today about homosexual issues, and they say, do you mean to say that homosexual marriage should not be allowed by the law? Same-sex marriage should not be allowed by the law because God said to Moses on Mount Sinai, you shall not.
Yeah.
And I would say, yeah, that's right.
Yep.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And they will say, but God said other things to Moses. Okay, so within 10 minutes, whether you want to or not, you're going to be talking about slavery. Right? Within 10 minutes, they're going to say, but the Old Testament allowed for slavery. The Old Testament prohibited clam chowder. The Old Testament prohibited bacon, which is a compelling argument.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we've all wrestled through that. Marcus doesn't anymore, but
no, he had, I think, two slabs of bacon this morning. Yeah.
So there's at least a prima facie case for them there, but
I vapored a pig.
But with oysters, no.
Amen.
So you have this. They'll say Moses said other stuff. The Bible says other stuff. Okay, and this is, like I said, 3 chess moves ahead.
Yeah.
If you're talking to someone about the sinfulness of the homosexual lifestyle, they will say the Bible is not to be trusted as a guide for morality because Moses said that slaves could be owned under these conditions, and it doesn't matter how humane it is, right? And the Apostle Paul returned Onesimus to Philemon, and he tells in Ephesians, he tells the slaves to work hard for their masters, and it doesn't matter that he tells the masters to be humane to the slaves, but they're right in the Bible. Now, as soon as they make that move, then conservative evangelical Christians start playing the "that was then, this is now" game.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start playing "that was then, this is now," they've got you, because 2 can play that. Right?
That's right.
If you get to simply arbitrarily wave your hand and say, well, we don't have to take those parts of the Bible seriously because slavery, right? Everybody knows slavery is wrong, and therefore Moses and Jesus and Paul are all wrong, right? Because of modern enlightened thought. As soon as you do that, they're going to start saying, well, why can't I reason in exactly the same way with regard to my same-sex spouse, right? And you have nothing to withstand them because you've abandoned the scriptures, and you are now opposing them with your bigotries. You find homosexual practice distasteful, personally distasteful, and that means that when they accuse you of that, they actually have a point, right?
That's right.
So the sexual sin is not immoral because it's distasteful. Right? It's immoral because God prohibits it.
That's right.
Right. So there are many faithful Christians who walk away from various sexual temptations, and the reason they have to resist sexual temptations is precisely because they're not distasteful; they're attractive. Right.
That's right.
And so we have to have a ground of resistance that is grounded in something other than our personal feelings. And so what this has done is knocked all your props out, and there you are opposing same-sex marriage because you don't. Because of the ick factor.
Because it's icky.
And that's going to last months. It's not going to last very long at all. The other thing, and this goes back to something that I think I learned from my father, at least in spirit, if not overtly, and that is to have no problem passages a priori going in. All right. So once the exegesis is done, once I know what the passage actually says, I'm not going to back off of what it teaches a millimeter, right? So no problem passages. I'm not going to make excuses for Moses. I'm not going to explain Jesus' thought processes, why he was, held captive by some of the assumptions of the day, right? No, I'm a Christian. So if I'm a Christian, I follow Jesus, and that means I don't back away from the Bible at all. And one time we were handing out, there was a homosexual dance or something downtown here, and so some of us went out down.
So is it a homosexual dance?
Yeah, yeah.
Is a dance going on somewhere?
Yeah, at the old post office.
Okay.
And they were holding some event, and so some of us went down there and were handing out literature outside. And one of the attendees was upset and called the Methodist minister to come down and deal with us, to come down and argue. So he came down and he was talking with me, arguing with me, and he said, "So you're saying because Leviticus?" And I said, "Right." And he said, "But God allowed for slavery in the Bible." And I said, "Well, yeah, that's right. What's your problem? What's the point?" And we were all done, right? He didn't have anything to say, because that move almost always gets the Christians to run down the street yelling.
Because I know that God was really mean before, but he's so much nicer now.
Right. Yeah, we adjusted his meds between Malachi and Matthew.
Well, I think you learned that move just gets you into the Methodist church.
Yeah. So I mean okay. So the point is, okay. So let's go there for a second, because a lot of people don't like to listen to the rest of the argument.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, because God says, that's my argument fundamentally. I've got all kinds of really great and creative external things that go on around this as to why it's bad for society, health reasons, the different stuff that happens with the destruction of the family. But fundamentally, it's because Jesus is the reference point, he's the center, and because he says.
Right.
And so we go to his word now and we go, yeah, so God did have a form of slavery, not resembling what took place in Georgia. Right. In the Old Testament, for the preservation of life and all the rest of it. So now we start explaining. So what do we explain?
So if they say, "Oh, I've never heard this before," are you justifying vile abuse of slaves?
Yeah.
I'd say absolutely not. That was a sin. God hates it.
Yeah.
He's going to judge it at the last day.
Yeah.
Are you defending race-based chattel slavery? No, absolutely not. That's not a biblical pattern. So one of the things I would do is I would distinguish the kind of slavery you have in the Old Testament, where it's all under the law of God, where I would say it amounted to glorified indentured servanthood.
Right. Yes.
So
right.
That's what you have in the Mosaic law. In the New Testament, you're dealing with a different situation where the slavery, the laws governing slavery, were pagan and Roman law, and there, the Apostle Paul is giving Christians instructions on how to deal with it.
Right.
And I would say that his instructions amount to, here is a peaceful and godly way to subvert the pagan system. Okay, so we want to subvert this system without a war. We're not going to organize a riot. We're not going to have a Spartacus kind of slave revolt that would be crushed.
Yeah.
What we're going to do is we're going to lead slaves and their masters to Christ. We're going to teach them how to live in their station. In Corinthians, Paul says, if you have an opportunity for freedom, take it. Right. So it's for freedom that Christ has set us free, but we want to do it peacefully. And one of the fun things, and this is not a slam dunk thing, but I think it's likely. In Ephesus, at the end of the first century, there was a bishop in Ephesus named Onesimus. Okay, I believe it was the same, the Philemon's freed slave.
Really? Okay.
So Paul returns Onesimus to Philemon and says, "Receive him back as a brother. You owe me a lot, Philemon. So whatever he owes you, put it up to my account." So Paul insists that they reconcile peacefully, and I believe that sort of approach, that kind of logic, eats out the whole system of slavery from the inside. So when you have people who are just don't know how to live their own lives, right? Then you have to deal with them somehow, right? And this is another thing. This is just and the Old Testament law tells us how to do that.
Yeah.
There are currently in the United States about 1 million people incarcerated. Okay, they're slaves.
Right.
The Constitution prohibits slavery except for people who've been convicted of a crime. We have 1 million people locked up in dog kennels, right?
Right.
And we feel good about ourselves because we can drive to work and not see them working in the fields.
Yeah.
Because we have them locked up in a dog kennel.
Yeah.
Right? We're morally superior. And we have them there because some 19-year-old kid bought some pot,
Yeah.
right?
Man, I love Doug Wilson. Goodness. Okay.
Oh, it's
Go ahead.
getting good.
Okay. So slavery is inescapable.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to be a slave.
That's right.
There's going to be because not everybody is self-governed.
Yep. Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Some people are out of control and they need to be taken in hand. And I'm not saying that we should let all the criminals loose.
Right.
But I'm saying that are you serious? 1 million people? And that's because what do we call them? We call them penitentiaries, right? Because we think the state is the savior. We think that we can lock them up in a dog kennel that makes them penitent.
Penitent.
Right? For young kids, we call them reformatories because we think the state can reform the heart. The state can't reform the heart.
That's right.
The state can't give a penitent heart, right? So what we do is we send these people off to grad school for criminals, right?
Yes.
In order to harden them.
Yeah.
Then they get released. They do it again. We send them back. If we applied biblical penalties, which would be, let's say it's a punk who steals your car. You know, what we do now, a punk steals your car and takes it for a joyride and runs it into a tree, and then he's prosecuted. It's a felony. We send him up the river, and then we raise the taxes on the guy whose car was stolen to pay for room and board for the.
Yeah. He gets robbed twice.
He gets robbed twice.
But in
Yeah.
biblical situation, he would have to make restitution, and it would have to be personal. It'd have to be
Right.
personal, unless the person said, "I don't want to make it personal. He doesn't owe me anything."
Right.
But if you wanted him to come back, and let's say there's a $15,000 value on that car,
Right.
he would have to work off the
$15,000
$15,000
plus 20%.
And if he became your slave, just to keep it a fiery topic and not even get around the word, if he became your slave, you now have to interact with him. And you now have to look him in the eye. You have to talk to him. And that's going to change you, and it's going to change him.
Right.
Right? I mean, that's hard to get around. I mean, because that would change society.
So you drive it down to the heart of it. Every fallen, screwed up society has slaves. All of them. We're no different.
Yeah.
And so my favorite question is, by what standard? So if you're going to have slavery, by what standard? Who makes the decisions? Is it impersonal and bureaucratic, right?
Yeah.
Or is it personal, right? So if someone...
Would you say joining the military is another form of that?
It could be, if it was voluntary, no. But if, let's say, a judge gave someone an option, right. But I would.
But haven't you told people? Haven't you seen people in your life that say, Doug, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life?
Right.
And what's your advice to them sometimes?
Yeah. You need to carry a rifle for a while.
Right.
You need to go dig a hole, and you need to learn discipline, and that.
But also to have other people telling you. I've heard you say some people need other people telling them what to do.
Right. Right.
Right.
And that is exactly correct. So if you have one of my jokes is, if I were president, and what a glorious 3 days that would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I had the authority to, I would let all sorts of people out of the penitentiary as soon as they make restitution. If their family takes up a collection, they can walk free. Nonviolent, sort of nonviolent property crimes, they make restitution. They put it right. They pay for their room and board. Pay the victim back plus 20%. You're free to go. And why are we trying to do things that the state can't do? Only Jesus can do these things.
Yeah.
And so what it boils down to is everybody wants to arbitrarily say that what you're defending is the worst abuses in South Carolina prior to the war. And I would say, no, I don't defend any of those abuses. I think God hates those sorts of things. I think they're evil. I think.
And you actually said something that I think was a powerful part of the film. I think it was in the film. At least it was in the all the original footage. And when people started challenging him on this issue because they just don't want to listen, that's our culture today. They hear the word slavery, they go, boom, gotcha. I win, you lose because you use the word. But the conversation of slavery comes up, and you said, no, actually, I believe that people who kidnapped and enslaved deserve to die.
Right.
It's like, wow, that puts me in a whole new category because I don't think most liberals are even willing to say that slave owners deserve to die. Let's lock them up for a while and make everyone pay for it, but let's not kill them. Doug.
Right. Well, kidnapping was in Israel. Kidnapping was a capital offense.
That's right.
And so the slave trade off the west coast of Africa was, I think, a capital. I think trafficking in human souls in order to sell them like chattel was a capital crime. And a just republic should have been treated with the death penalty.
Yeah.
And what does chattel mean?
Like livestock, or
Okay.
Okay. So chattel it'd be a broader term.
Okay, got it. Because I hear chattel slavery for the South, but that just means you're just treating something like.
So there's let's say you're an ancient Roman and a Greek prisoner who was highly educated was captured, and you made him your house slave, and he was the tutor of all your children. He was more educated than everybody in the house. That would not be a chattel slave.
Got it.
Right. He'd be a slave, but not a chattel slave.
Got it.
So you have so that was vile, awful. But where does the word slave come from? Well, it comes from Slav, right? The Slavs are the ones who were picked on. They're the ones who gave their name to this. So while the slave trade was operating off the west coast of Africa, that unhappy continent had a bunch of slave traders operating off the north coast. So the Muslim raiders would go across the Mediterranean. They would land in European towns, kidnap the whole village. There was one raid as far north as Ireland, where the Muslim corsairs would just land, take everybody captive, take them back to slavery in Africa. So there was slaves being exported out from the west coast of Africa, and upwards of 1 million white Europeans being hauled into slavery to North Africa.
Yeah.
All right. So is it too early to talk about reparations there?
Yeah. Too soon?
Is it too?
Yeah.
Is this too soon?
Doug? Too soon.
Too soon.
Too soon, Doug.
So
Just
if everybody, what everybody wants to do is they want to make somebody.
too late. It's too late.
Yeah, too late. Not too late.
I think it's too late.